Welcome to the 11th episode in our video series. I'm Dr. David Van Nuys, co-author with Michael Kelleher of the book This is the Zodiac Speaking, Into the Mind of a Serial Killer. And here's a look at the cover of the book. By now, I'm going to assume you've seen my previous 10 YouTube installments. If you haven't, you should go back and see them first. And I know there have been some problems with the volume of these. I'm doing my best. Have it jacked up as high as I can. Now, once again, thanks to all of you who've posted comments to keep going. In our last installment, I gave a brief description of the murder of Paul Stein, a young graduate student and part-time cab driver in San Francisco. Then I went on to analyze the letter that he sent to the San Francisco Chronicle. You'll recall that the letter ended with a threat to shoot school children as they came bouncing out of a school bus. The threat created considerable fear and uproar throughout the Bay Area and a whole series of articles in the San Francisco Chronicle. Nearly a month goes by after that, and the story drops off the newspaper's pages, and that may be why the Zodiac, ever hungry for attention, writes his next letter. One of two from him that are received on the same day by the San Francisco Chronicle. Today, I'll cover the first, which actually came in the form of a greeting card, which depicts a dripping ink pen and the pre-printed message, "Sorry I haven't written, but I just washed my pen." Somehow that doesn't strike me as a terribly funny greeting card, even from the Zodiac, or especially from the Zodiac. Added to this was the following hand-printed note. "This is the Zodiac speaking. I thought you would need a good laugh before you hear the bad news. You won't get the news for a while, yet P.S. could you print this new cipher on your front page? I get awfully lonely when I'm ignored. So lonely I could do my thing." And then it says DES July, August, September, October equals 7. So now let's step back through this. And by the way, once again, it's laced with misspellings. First of all, this is the Zodiac speaking. Well, once again, the writer refers to himself as the Zodiac, which supports his persistent drive for grandiosity. It seems as though his sense of grandiosity is increasing with each letter. The next line, "I thought you would need." Now, actually, it's I though, so the T got left off somehow, and need is spelled N-E-A-D. I thought you would need a. So is it possible that the writer's spelling errors might be a form of dyslexia? Some otherwise bright individuals seem to have problems with sensory motor processing such that they just cannot spell correctly, and this is distinctly a possibility. In fact, my co-author Michael Kelleher wrote, "This is indeed a possibility and a good observation. There are also at least two other possibilities," he writes. One, the writer is deliberately creating these errors to defeat attempts to more accurately analyze his communications. Or two, he's primarily an auditory learner who has never mastered the written English language beyond a fairly rudimentary level, but is able to read easy novels, non-technical manuals with diagrams and photographs, and simply written periodicals. End quote. Now, Kelleher goes on to say that he tends to agree with me that it probably was not deliberate, since the errors are not consistent, and sometimes he writes better at other times than at other times, and so Kelleher thinks that it probably is not a deliberate obfuscation. That continues to be a point that's hotly debated in the Zodiac community, though. The letter goes on, "Good laugh before you hear the bad news. You won't get the news for a while yet." Now, perhaps this is too obvious to state, but this writer is emotionally immature. His taunting of the police and his sarcastic reference to having a good laugh bring to mind the image of a perpetually depressed, perpetually angry teenager. This is not to say that I think the writer is a teenager, but emotionally, he gives the impression of functioning as if he had been arrested at this stage of his development. It's as if he's one who's constantly making cruel remarks and playing pranks. However, this man's pranks are off the chart, and the writer is showing off. Even though the attention he receives is negative, he wants the whole world to know how cunning and clever he has been. This is a very short note. It ends now with, P.S. Could you print this new cipher on your front page? And there was a cipher included, which I'll mention in a moment. But it's clear that his desire for this message to appear on the front page of a newspaper is in line with the theory that he feels that he feeds off the negative attention that he's receiving. He really hungers for it. And he's kind of been off the pages now for most of a month. And so here's another grab for publicity. Then the next line says, I get awfully lonely when I'm ignored. So lonely I could do my thing. And he capitalizes T and thing and puts exclamation point, a whole bunch of them. So here, the writer gives us a clue to his emotional makeup, even though it's couched in humor. To stab someone multiple times, first of all, speaks of extreme internal rage, like having a tantrum on somebody else's body. But now he lets us know that he's lonely, that he's cut off from others, ignored, desperate for attention. He's determined to get even, to make others pay, to make them his slaves. A slave has to fulfill every desire, the master's every desire. The writer's needs were not met in this life, so he will make sure that they're met in the next. This suggests that he may have suffered great deprivation very early in life. In no way is this offered to excuse his horrible behavior, but it may help us to understand it. Also, the act of writing these letters can be seen as an antidote to the loneliness that he feels. These letters give the writer a feeling of being in communication with others. Now the last lines say DES, des, day, July, and then Aug, Sept, Oct, equals 7. Now this is braggadocio I wrote in the book. It's the equivalent of the American World War II fighter pilots who decorated their airplanes with rising sun symbols to indicate the number of kills they had attained, or the gunslinger with notches on a six-shooter, perhaps. Perhaps just as relevant in this case, the adolescent male who boasts about the number of his sexual conquests. And his use of DES is something that neither Kelleher nor I comment on the book. I just now noticed it, that DES, DE means of or from in Spanish, and I believe that DES means the same in French, which raises the possibility that perhaps he had some knowledge of French. This is not something that we discussed. Now, clearly he's using this to refer to his number of kills, which he's citing as 7. Well, at this point, we know he did 5 attacks, or 7 attacks, but only 5 kills. So it raised the possibility, were there some 2 more kills that he committed that we didn't correctly link up to him, or was just more of his bragging? Now, he does refer to a cipher, and I should mention that there was also another one of Zodiac's neatly laid out cryptograms included with this card. And this one used a different cipher than he'd used previously, and law enforcement agencies were not able to decode it. However, Robert Graysmith did come up with at least a partial translation, Graysmith being the other main Zodiac author. I won't attempt to cover that cipher here, but you'll find it in our book. So please watch for subsequent episodes in which I will continue to move through the Zodiac material. And if you're at all interested in psychology, I hope you are following my podcast series on Shrink Wrap Radio at www.shrinkwrapradio.com. Until next time.